Chocolate or vanilla?
Oh, chocolate.
Beach or mountains?
That's a tough one because I like them both. Can I say yes?
Yeah, I think so. Sweet or savory?
Probably sweet.
Same. TV or book?
That's a tough one. I would say a book.
Me too. Winter or summer?
Summer.
Dogs or cats?
Dogs.
Pancakes or waffles?
Crepes.
Early bird or night owl?
I'm a night owl.
Left-handed or right-handed?
I'm right-handed.
Take risks or play it safe?
I'll take a risk.
What is your full name?
Olivia Jean Scow is my maiden name. Steffensen.
Do you know why you were given this name?
Yes. I was named after my grandmother, Stanley. Her name is Olive Aline Stanley. Olive Aline Wild Stanley. And mother named me after her. She couldn't name me Olive Aline because my grandmother refused to let me be named that. And so mother said, okay, I will use Olivia Jean. And so I became Olivia Jean, which is supposed to be one name, but the state of California thought it should be two and separated it.
What was your nickname growing up and how did you get it?
Oh, I was always Jeannie. If I see my cousins, I'm still Jeannie, as they are Annie or whatever the child's name.
When and where were you born?
I was born on the 5th of June, 1944, which encompassed D-Day in World War II. I was born in Oakland, California, where we lived because my dad was a Navy guy assigned to a Navy minesweeper in the Pacific. And I didn't see my dad, or he didn't see me till I was 18 months old.
Tell me about the sequence of children in your family, where you fit, and what that was like.
I was the only one. I guess I didn't have a really hard time being an only one because my mother was basically an only one. She had one sister who died when she was 11, and she was born when my mother was 9. So mother basically was alone, except for the few years that Aunt Patty was alive. And so any trick that I wanted to pull, i.e. get out of dishes or whatever, no. Mother always knew what I was going to do, so I didn't do it.
That feeds into the next question. What type of chores did your parents give you?
Just about everything. I did dishes. I didn't cook so much. I did really good with toast. But, yes, we had toasters then. Just doing dishes and helping around, cleaning the house. I did a lot of dusting and vacuuming as a child. Yeah.
Do you remember a time as a child when you were mischievous?
Probably always. The only time that I can remember where I actually did something that my mother got angry about, we were at my aunt's house, and I decided I wanted to go play with somebody and didn't tell her where I was going. And I really caught heck when I got home, when I got back to my aunt's house. My mother was in a panic. When I was little, I could go outside to play, but Grandma would put my hair in ringlets with bobby pins and and then she put a net on me. I never went outside without a hairnet on because I didn't want my hair bleached.
Who did you look up to as a child and why?
Oh, my mother. Mother couldn't do anything wrong. She was the most beautiful woman I knew. She was the most talented woman I knew. And your mother takes after my mom.
How did you meet your spouse?
At church. We were in the same ward, but he is almost 4 years older than I am. So he wasn't even in the realm of people I consciously knew of. Mm-hmm. And so he had come home from BYU, and I had actually stayed home from school on one of my mother's no-school days. But usually, if I didn't go to school, I didn't go out at night. This night was a ward banquet night, and the young women were serving, so I went and served. And Lynn had come home. The guy said, let's get a date. You can come to the homecoming with us at high school. So he asked my girlfriend initially, and she had a date. So she said, why don't you ask my friend out? He asked me. I asked my mother if I could go, and she said, you have to be careful, these older guys, but just be careful, and yes, you can go. And so I went home. Mother came home with me quickly and did my hair. I changed my clothes, and he picked me up. There were 3 couples in the car, 2 in the front, 4 of us in the back. Now, Mother had already warned me about these older guys, and I was pretty scared. And I'm not scared, I was nervous. And so when I got in the car, it was very tight. And Lynn went to put his arm up on the seat like this, just to make room. And I slid forward, making even more room, and talked the rest of the night. I didn't shut up. I was surprised he came back for another date.
At what point did you know that he was the one?
The day he proposed. Mother said she knew 6 weeks before then that we would be married. But I didn't. I was still engaged to someone else. Mm-hmm. And it took 6 weeks for me to finally tell him that I was engaged to somebody else. Mm-hmm. There's my missionary. And there's me.
Mm. What is a quality that you admire in Opa?
That's hard, because there are many qualities that I love about him. He is patient where I'm not. He's considerate of most everyone around him. He loves the Lord. That's probably good. That one makes me cry. That must be the one.
Yeah. What do you remember that was special about your wedding day?
I don't know if it's special, but it's pretty funny. Special was the fact that President Nathan Tanner married us. But we had to be married at 7 o'clock in the morning. I had forgotten my shoes. And so Lynn went to my house to pick them up. And he was late getting to the temple. President Tanner was getting very nervous, and I was getting beside myself because they wouldn't allow me to even go into the waiting area until he got there. And I thought, he's going to leave me at the church. He finally got there, and we were sealed. And after that, we went outside, had some pictures done, and then I went with my mother this way, Lynn went with his parents that way. We met for lunch with the family, and then our parents took us this way. We didn't meet again until the reception. We came together, and we finally got off alone by ourselves after the reception.
crazy day.
It was a crazy day.
What relationship advice would you give to your 20-year-old self?
Be patient. At 20, I was expecting my first baby. And I guess I would say patience. I just needed patience. Patience in everything, every issue of my life, I needed more patience. I wanted to do everything right now.
Yeah.
And couldn't.
Yeah.
So it would be patience.
That's good advice. You actually just answered this. The next question is, how old were you when you had your first child?
I was 21. I was old for that generation.
Knowing what you do now, what would you tell your young parent self?
Be less concerned about the condition of your home and more aware of your children. I had been raised to think that my house had to be immaculate all the time. I still have trouble when my house gets dirty and messy. I'm not settled unless everything's in its place. I actually think I'm an ADHD kid. I was hyperactive. I took 3 dancing lessons a week because I had so much energy. They couldn't control the energy that I had. And so I took dancing, I took piano, I took just about anything. Tumbling lessons. I took it all. There we are. He's come back from Vietnam. He got his captain's bars.
What did you do for a career and how did you get into that field?
Spent 1 year down at BYU taking just basic courses. My mother would hope that I had become a teacher. All I wanted was my MRS. And
What's that?
Mrs.
Oh, of course.
All I wanted was to be a wife and a mother.
Yeah.
And a homemaker. That's all I ever wanted to be.
Part of that is being a teacher too. So.
Yes. Yes, it is.
Yeah.
And I didn't ever expect to have a degree. I never saw it in my future. Not out of high school, even though that was what my mother wanted for me. So I took general courses. I'd taken basic business courses in high school. That's what I've done.
Yeah. What did a normal day's work look like for you?
To begin with, I did something called key punch, which was printing the cards that went into the computers.
Yeah.
We punched holes into the computers. The alphabet was a punch in the card. And so I did that. I first worked for the Utah Bell telephone company. Worked for them for about 9 months. And then my husband was in the service by then. And I moved to California after he finished basic training. And so I quit my job. But then I got another job working for Stanford Research, which was a branch of Stanford University. And I was a secretary to Dr. Fend, who did the research on how many bullets would be fired in Vietnam in a particular amount of time. And I did the typing for that, welcomed people in. My main job was to make coffee for him. And being someone who'd never had coffee, I had great difficulty. And after about 2 weeks, he'd made his own.
That's really funny. Okay, the next section is called favorites. So, what is your favorite genre of music?
I like a variety of music. I love jazz. I love some classical. I'm not into opera, but I love classical music. I love rock and roll. I love the music from the 60s because it was a little bit of everything. I love music generally.
Yeah. Very cool. What is one of your favorite quotes or sayings?
That's a good question. My grandmother had a lot of little quotes that she would say. And every now and then something spills out that I've forgotten that she would say to me.
What is something you use every day that you would not want to live without?
The gospel. That is the one thing I use. Tenets of the gospel every day. No matter what I'm doing, the gospel is behind all of it.
Tell me a story about a person or place from your family history that is special to you.
My grandparents, all four of them, were special to me. We lived with my grandma and grandpa Stanley. We lived together until I was 11. Basically because grandma and grandpa had just lost my Aunt Patty. And I was 2 years old at the time. And my mother literally let my grandmother raise me from that point on to help her to be able to live. She took my aunt's death very hard, and grandpa did too. Though grandpa didn't show it visually, he took that inside. You could tell that there were times when he would think about her. And grandma had a hard time. She often told me if it hadn't been for me, she wouldn't have lived.
Tell me about a loved one that has passed on that you have felt close to in your life.
My mother. And she still comes to me when I need her.
Would you also mind telling the story about Grandpa and the helmet? About Grandpa's
Oh, my
helmet?
dad.
Yeah.
My dad, as I said, was a Navy guy. He was enlisted. When he first went on board ship, he was a mechanic. He was trained as a mechanic. But he got so seasick that they brought him up on deck and made him a gunner. Seasick guy on the ship. That was a joke. Anyway, they'd gone through, it was part of the initial attack for Iwo Jima. And each of the ports prior to that, the minesweepers would go into the Gulf, the port, whatever it was that they were going to be landing in the landing zone, and wipe out by catching the mines, which would be sunk with some kind of a weight to hold them in place. And they would go in with a sweeper and literally catch them on these sweepers and then take them out far enough that they could drop them and then explode them. And they had done that in prior ports up to Iwo Jima. And that's where they were when they were strafed with Japanese planes. The planes were dropping metal, and they had the kamikaze pilots that just dove the planes. They committed suicide diving their plane into the American ships. My father was up on the gunning turret and was hit by the shrapnel. He always wore his helmet, not straight, but on the side. He always wore his hat, no matter what hat, on the side of his head like this. And he had put the hat on like that with the helmet. And the metal pinned his helmet to his scalp. It was over here on this side of his head. He carried a scar right here on his forehead until he died. He still had it. They sent my mother the helmet. As he was sent to the hospital, my mother received the helmet with a letter saying how brave he had been and how this helmet was particularly good for him, saved his life. But it wasn't until she read the letter, she thought he was dead when she first opened the box with his helmet, because they didn't give their helmets back to them.
They should have put like a big sign right when she opened the box, like, he's okay.
Yeah, but the letter came telling her he was all right and where he would be. And they sent him to Seattle, to the Navy, whatever base is up there in Kirkland, Washington. And that's where my mother went to be with him, and I was 18 months old. But he stayed that long, from the time, the Battle of Iwo Jima, until, I don't know how long he was in the hospital. But if I was 18 months old, I'd have to correlate the Battle of Iwo Jima with my birth. Yeah. I should also tell you that he was promised if he was believed in the Lord, he'd come home safe.
Yeah.
He was.
Yeah.
I think that helped a lot.
Yeah, I'm sure it helped. I'm sure it helped
Make
your
it come
mom
home.
too.
Yeah. And that's where it hit. Right there.
That's crazy.
He must have had it kind of, all I can think of is he must have been looking further straight ahead in his helmet, because the scar was right here.
Yeah.
And that's where it hit. Well, he wasn't wearing glasses. So it's probably like that.
Crazy.
Tilted that way.
Yeah.
And that would put the scar. Yep.
Yeah.
That's where it would be. That was his helmet. It went over a little beanie. They're heavy.
Yeah, they are.
Oh, they are heavy.
It's really heavy.
Yeah. Oh, they're metal.
Yeah.
They're made out of steel.
That's probably why they work, right?
Yeah. With that leather liner in it. Well, consider 1943
Yeah.
to, what are we, to 2020? It's 80 years old.
Yeah.
You've done well, helmet. He is in uniform.
Oh, yeah. That's awesome.
There's the cap.
Yeah, I love that.
Oh, that's a good one. My dad, when he shows how young he is.
Yeah.
Looking back in my genealogy, the name has changed to this. It was AU. It was A something U. And I think when they came through Ellis Island, they didn't come through Ellis Island. I don't know where they came in, because they came in a windjammer ship from Denmark. I can only think that they were, in saying who they were, the person that was writing down their names heard Schau and SCHOW. They didn't speak English.
Yeah.
They spoke Danish. So they just interpreted this
Yeah.
out of the name.
Yeah.
And I've heard two stories where it was either they were Anderson from the city of Skou, SKOU, or they were Skou from Denmark. I don't know.
Tell me about a time when someone's help or kindness made a difference in your life.
So many. Being a military wife, you're alone often. And we learn to depend on other wives, and particularly wives of military guys in our ward. And when I was pregnant with Jared, this would be 1973, 74, because he was born in 74. I was having a hard time I was sick a lot. And we were living in Virginia, just outside of Washington, D.C., where my husband was assigned. And the sisters in the ward came over. One sister in particular, her husband was one of the protective service for the president. And she was the cleanest woman I ever knew. Her name was Martha. I can't remember her last name. But her mother wrote an article on homemaking for the Deseret News. And didn't know that at the time. But she would come over she would appear at my door with a bucket and rubber gloves. And she would come in and wash my floors and clean my toilets. Wow. She said, "You can survive anything if your floors are clean, your toilets are clean." And she'd leave.
That's so nice.
And it was this prim woman. Her hair was never out of place. Always clean. She was the epitome of tidy. And she'd go to my door with rubber gloves and a basket, pail. Clean my floors and that one, just because it was so 90 degrees from what she normally was.
Yeah.
That was one that really sticks out.
What is a challenge you've overcome, and how did you get through it?
First challenge was when my husband went to Vietnam. We were actually on orders to go to Germany. And when we'd come back to Utah to say goodbye to our family, because we would be gone for 4 years. Mm-hmm. And we spent a month at home saying goodbye, having a good time. And then we drove cross country. And my husband went to check in at headquarters. And the guy looked at me and he says, "I can't even talk to you. You got to go see the captain. You got to go see the captain." And so he went to talk to the captain and found out that his orders had been changed. Although everything was fixed for us to go, we were due to have our furniture picked up the next day to go and ship into storage. Things were just all up in the air, and they said, "Nope, you're going to Vietnam." And so 3 months later, he'd gone through school, and we were heading home for him to leave. And we had the bishop give us a blessing, both of us, not just him, but both of us. And our bishop, who knew us both from when we were first married, mm-hmm. because I was in and out of the ward all the time. Mm-hmm. And he blessed both of us that if we lived the gospel, then we'd come home safely. And for the verification of that, you have to have Grandpa's story. Mm-hmm. But Grandpa did come home safe. Mm-hmm. And it was interesting. I'd never had a feeling that he was in danger. Never did.
How has faith or spirituality played a role in your life?
In every aspect of my life. I've known the gospel is true since I was 8 years old. Never had a doubt. You say, 8 years old, you didn't really know. I knew. Mm-hmm. I knew. So, yeah, my entire life. Mm-hmm. Religion has been a big part of my life.
Yeah.
My parents were active in church only after my dad married my mother. Mm-hmm. My dad had not been really active. He was a small town country boy, and they all had experienced smoking, though my dad didn't smoke a lot. He'd smoked, and he probably had a few beers. He was that kind of guy. He was a character. But after Mom and Dad were married, and after he came back from being in battle, they settled down. They got back into the church, into activity through dancing. they took some dancing lessons, and then they were called to be the ward dance directors. We actually had dance directors then.
Mm-hmm.
And then they were the stake dance directors for several years in 2 different stakes. And that's how they got active.
Yeah.
And stayed active through mother's passing away. Dad filled 3 missions after my mother passed away. Plus, he worked at the temple for years. He was a ward clerk for 30 years.
I didn't know he did 3 missions after that.
Yeah. I didn't either until I saw a ward bulletin that had
Oh,
been
really?
written for him. Mm-hmm.
That's very cool.
I didn't know. I knew he'd filled 1,
Mm-hmm.
but I didn't know the other 2.
What were they?
I don't know. They were probably as a state missionary, you work in your own stake.
Yeah.
So that was probably what they were, was working the stake.
That's cool. That's awesome. I think that in all your other answers, you can see how faith has played a role throughout.
Oh, it has.
everything that you've done. Yeah.
It's been a big part of my life.
Yeah. What are 5 things you are grateful for?
My husband, my children, my grandchildren, my great-grandchildren, for my heritage.
The roots and the branches.
Yeah, they all tie together.
If you could turn back time, what is one thing you would do differently?
First thing I'd do is go back to 1979. And I would make sure my mother didn't take an extra pill. Yes, that's what killed her. She had the flu, and she'd called the pharmacy, or she called her doctor for a refill of something. And he sent her the refill. She took 1 pill and never woke up. I would start there. And the next, probably the same year, I would have told my husband to accept the orders staying in Hawaii. Because his career changed completely when we left Hawaii.
Interesting.
He would have made rank 4 years earlier if we'd have stayed in Hawaii. We'd have retired as a colonel, not a lieutenant colonel. But would he have been called as a bishop? Probably not. So it's hard to say which was the most important choice.
Yeah.
I think we made the most important choice.
Yeah.
For our lives, we made the best. But for his career, that's not the right choice.
What do you miss about the world from when you were young?
Oh, a sense of peace, of safety, security, of being able to talk to strangers and not be worried. I mean, when I was growing up, never locked our doors. Never. We kids would play outside at night all the time. We played such horrible games as we'd throw the ball over the house, and then you'd catch the ball and you'd run the other side to catch the other kids. And we'd draw houses in the street. We'd draw outlines of rooms in the street, and we'd have pretend beds, and somebody would be the pretend parents. And there was a huge amount of kids in our neighborhood. It was one of the first neighborhoods that were built after World War II. A lot of GIs bought homes out there in Rose Park. And we kids, I'm thinking there's 1, 2, 3, 4 within 5 houses of me.
Wow.
That were my age. Plus there were 2 a couple of years older, and 1 that was a year younger. I mean, we were all right there. And we'd have to get out of the street when the bus would come. Because the city bus would come up the street. Every 30 minutes there was a bus coming up the street. Until 10 o'clock at night. And then didn't come anymore. TV went off at 10 o'clock at night.
Sounds pretty nice.
It was
Sounds
really
like
nice.
A good life.
It was. To my posterity. It's hard. It's hard to think of a time when I won't be here anymore. To be able to see them. To watch my grandkids and my great-grandchildren grow up. I would love to do that. I will watch from the other side. I pray for you. I pray for peace and safety. I pray for a world that you can go anywhere. I pray that you belong to the gospel. I love my Savior. He's in my life every day. He guides my decisions. He helps me when I'm distressed. My prayers. I'm sure he gets tired of my prayers. But I want him to know that I love him. I am so grateful for family, for my family, for my parents and grandparents. I've been blessed to have a wonderful life. I've been protected. I've been kept naive of things that goes on in the world. My parents protected me. My grandparents protected me. My husband still protects me. I love them all. My testimony is that I love the gospel of Jesus Christ. I love my family. I'm grateful for those who've already passed away. I'm grateful for the legacy they left me. I'm grateful for my family now, for my children. I weep for them when they're having trouble. I pray for them constantly that their lives will be easier for them, that the Lord will bless them. They're all good people. My father's patriarchal blessing told him, because he had been such a valiant soldier in the war in heaven, he had been given the right to choose his own posterity. I'm grateful that he chose me. I can't understand why. I'm sorry they didn't have more. But I know that the gospel has always been in our lives. I know that my children were chosen. My husband was chosen. And I'm grateful for that. My dad chose wonderful people. I'm grateful to be their mother. To be a grandmother. I have fantastic grandchildren. And now I have my great-grandson, Teddy. What a joy he is. And we look forward to our next one. Teddy will soon have a brother or sister. And I'll have another great-grandchild. I love all of you. However I'll be able to be with you, I will. I know that my mother and my grandmother and my father visit me. Maybe I'll be able to do that to you too. Just remember that you've come from a very worthy family, a royal family of God. We all fought for our Savior and for the gospel. We earned the right to be here. We earned the right to make right and wrong decisions. I pray that you'll learn to make the right ones. The blessings that you'll receive are greater than any worldly benefit you could ever encounter. It's not worldly wealth that you'll receive, or maybe you will. But always be there spiritually. Pray to your Heavenly Father. Live the gospel. Your lives will be so much better. I won't guarantee they'll be easy, because we're here to prove ourselves. Just look at the times when things are tough as opportunities for growth, because that's what they are. They're opportunities for growth. Stay close to your families. Stay close together. Whether you're my grandchildren, my great-grandchildren, or my great-great-grandchildren, whatever's to come, stay close together as a family. Hold tight to the gospel. To each other. Pray often. Include the Lord in your decisions. He will guide you. The Spirit will always be with you if you're living the gospel. I am so grateful to have had this life. And I bear this testimony that Joseph Smith was a prophet of God. He is a prophet of God. And each of those who have come after him are likewise prophets of God. President Nelson now bears a heavy load. Christ's coming is getting closer. The closer it gets, the harder things are going to be. Stay close to the gospel. Live the gospel. Read your scriptures. They're the guidebooks. I love your grandfather, and I love all of you so very much. And I say this in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.